For those who believe that man does not live by bread alone, evaluating whether capitalism is good for the poor requires that we pay attention not only to people's material standard of living, but also to their moral and ethical well-being. The persistent caricature in our society of the greedy capitalist is evidence of a widespread belief that capitalism undermines ethical behavior in individuals and cooperative behavior in societies. To put it more directly, many people believe that capitalism makes us selfish. Lesson 5 addresses this criticism, arguing that capitalist institutions affirm human dignity, that they create incentives for cooperative interaction, and that they reward ethical behavior in markets. Indeed, both theory and history offer strong evidence that acting selfishly, rather than with regard to the needs and wants of others, is a prescription for failure in the competitive marketplace. The historical case is bolstered by the empirical evidence provided in the ultimatum game, an experiment designed specifically to study the selfishness axiom, by observing whether people really do always act in their material self-interest. The classroom simulation of the ultimatum game is a very effective way to engage students in discussion of some of the ethical dimensions of capitalism. The FTE's field test of the ultimatum game simulation revealed that although the activity is immediately engaging for students and easy for teachers to conduct once they're familiar with it, some teachers found it hard to visualize from the written description. This short video is designed to let you see what the activity actually looks like. It takes you through the setup and procedures and even adds a few pointers on the debriefing. Because the video targets the procedures, we recommend that before viewing the video, you familiarize yourself with the content by reading both the Lesson 5 outline and the full ultimatum game simulation activity instructions. Additionally, it's useful to have the game procedures and debriefing questions in front of you for reference as you watch the video. Our experience with field test classrooms and teacher workshops suggests that less is more when it comes to setting up the ultimatum game. Unlike some simulations where students need a toolkit of conceptual knowledge to fully appreciate the experience, the ultimatum game is most powerful as a teaching tool if you simply jump in with both feet. Before class, prepare the payout envelopes. Medium-sized tan clasp envelopes work well. They're big enough to hold a substantial candy payout, and you can use them over and over. Write a random code on the inside flap of each envelope and cover the code with a blank sticky note. To begin the simulation, distribute the envelopes face down, instructing students not to touch them until you've explained what to do. All right, we're going to just jump into this activity very quickly. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of explanation until afterwards. So what I want you to do is that each one of these envelopes, I don't want you to look in it. It has a sticky note on the flap, and underneath the sticky note there is a code. And I want you to take the code from the flap and put it on the sticky note and put the sticky note in your pocket. And don't let somebody else see it. Then fold the flap down, don't seal it, and give the envelope back to me. Collect the envelopes and then select half the class to go into the hall or another room, while you give the instructions to those who remain. Okay. Now, the way this activity is set up, nobody else will know what you have done and what decisions you have made. Okay? So that's why you put the code on the little sticky note. And because I don't know what's on the code, nobody does. The only person who's going to know what's on the code is you. All right? So your actions in this activity are completely anonymous. And this is an experiment. Okay? And we designed it to be completely anonymous. So what you're going to do is you are going to fill out the top half of this form, and I'll tell you how to do that. And then I'm going to send you out in the hall and bring the other people back in. And I'm going to randomly distribute the forms, and they're going to fill in the bottom half of the form. All right? The students remaining in the room are called the proposers in the experiment. Use an overhead transparency of the proposal selection form to walk these students through their instructions. First, students must transfer their identification codes from the sticky note to the proposal selection form. Remind them that this is the way they'll collect their winnings at the end of the activity. The top of the form says proposal selection form, and the first blank says identification code. Put in that code what's on your sticky note. Okay, now the proposal is this. I am giving you and a partner $20. You don't know who that partner is. I don't know who that partner is, and we will never know. Okay? It's going to be completely anonymous. You are the proposer, and your job is to propose how that $20 be split. And the different splits are listed there. The first number in the combination is the amount the proposer will keep, and the second number is the amount that will be given to the responder, if the responder agrees to the proposal. The important point for proposers is to understand that if the responder rejects the agreement, neither of them gets anything. Their payouts are a big fat zero. If the responder, that's the anonymous person out there in the hall, accepts the proposal, then I will receive, and you put in the number that's the first thing in the circled pair, and the responder will receive. After circling a proposal, the proposer enters the numbers in the statement below. This provides the teacher a quick check to see that the students understand the instructions. Students who enter the numbers backwards probably were confused. Then the proposers hand their forms to the teacher upside down. Have the proposers and responders quickly change places without talking. All right, here's the deal. I'm going to hand you this proposal form, all right, and there is going to be a proposal on it, but I don't want you to turn it over yet. What I do want you to do is to get out your sticky note with your code on it. Again, use the overhead to walk the responders through the task. 1. Explain, as you randomly distribute the forms face down, what the proposers have done. Emphasize the double-blind nature of the experiment, and importantly, that this is a one-time interaction that won't be repeated. I'm not going to know who you're matched with. You're not going to know who you're matched with. Okay, but there is one of the people out in the group was the proposer for you, and you are called the responder in this experiment. So there are pairs, 9 pairs of people. Okay, and what I said to him is that I'm going to give $20, and it's up to them to decide how that $20 is split between 2 people. Okay? So turn the paper over. Instruct students to turn over the form. Use the overhead transparency to explain the choice the proposer made, as it's reflected on the form in front of them. First, the responders enter their codes from the sticky notes, and then they transfer the information from the top of the form to be sure that they understand what they will receive if they circle accept at the bottom of the form. Then remind the responders, as you did the proposers, that if they reject the proposal, both they and the proposer will get nothing. If the responder rejects the proposal, both people get 0. Finally, quickly collect the forms and bring the proposers back into the room. If you want to conduct the entire activity, including the debriefing, within a single class period, you'll need a helper. Or you can postpone the debriefing and prepare the envelopes yourself after class. Sort the proposal forms into accept and reject piles. Using the codes on the forms, find all the envelopes corresponding to the reject codes and set them aside. They don't get a payout. Match the remaining envelopes with the accept forms and place the payouts in the envelopes. To distribute the envelopes, spread them randomly on a table with the flaps open so that the codes show. Allow students to file by the table and exchange their coded sticky notes for the envelopes with the payout. As with all simulations, the most important part is the debriefing. Students may have shared a meaningful experience in the ultimatum game, but the key to their understanding of that experience lies in the discussion that follows. The teacher's job is to help them recognize and articulate the connections between the activity and the economic reasoning. Begin the debriefing by having students review and explain their choices and behavior in the simulation. It's important that they realize that in this game, their choices depended on their anticipation of the choices other people would make. What do you think proposers offered? Glenn?
I think something like in the middle is where they can benefit somewhat, but it's not going to be one of those things like it's easy for the receiver to shrug it off. Because like if you did something like 19 and 1, you know, they say, okay, well I lose $1, but they're going to lose 19, so it's easy for them just to shrug it off. But if you do something in the middle, where it's like, well, I'm going to lose, you know, $9 if I say no to this, but and it's kind of like make them think about it a little bit.
So you think the proposer's strategy has to be to keep the other person from rejecting it.
Yeah.
Okay.
They try and get like the highest amount of money they can.
Okay. Mackenzie?
I went lower so that I was for sure, I knew I was going to get some money, but they were going to still benefit.
Okay, so you were afraid they were going to reject it.
Yeah. So I went so I would lose, or I wouldn't get as much as they would.
Why were you afraid they would reject it?
Because I bet if I would have been like 19-1, then they would have been like, well, like he said, I'd rather lose $1 than have them gain 19.
Usually, student comments on their own choices will also offer the opportunity to connect the behavior and experiences back to economic theory. So wait a minute, let me make sure I'm hearing what David's saying. So what? David says $1's $1, and I'm assuming that you're meaning when you came in here you didn't have $1.
Yeah, I mean it's no loss to me if the other person gains more and better for them. They play the game better, but I'm still making $1 as opposed to not making any money.
Well, I think as a proposer, I look as if I was the one to accept or reject it, and I look to see, from their perspective, they're making two choices between $0 or whatever I offer them, which is going to be more than zero, no matter what.
Okay, and so as a proposer, would you have been willing to propose 19-1?
Yeah.
Okay. Than they would have had otherwise. So you're kind of thinking along the lines David is. 1 is better than nothing.
I think the situation would be different if you knew the other person, or you would.
Yeah.
Because if it was someone that you really didn't like, then you'd be like, no, I'd rather get 0 to make them get 0. But not knowing them.
Okay, that term is called social distance, and Jill's saying that the greater the social distance, the less likelihood that you would reject an offer, right? Okay, Marisa?
Adding to that, I think if you had known what other people were offered, like if they had all gotten $1, then you'd been like, okay. But if somebody, like, if you knew the person next to you was getting 10 and 10, you know, instead of your 19-1 split, then you reject.
Brian.
It's like if everyone...
If economic man is selfish, if he is materially self-interested, as the theory assumes, then we have to predict that most proposers will offer 19-1 splits. More importantly, we have to predict that the responders, because they realize that $1, or in the classroom activity 1 piece of candy, is better than $0 or 0 pieces of candy, they will not reject the 19-1 proposals. However, as you'll see in your classroom simulation, and as researchers have seen in thousands of ultimatum games in societies all over the world, actual experimental results are very different from the predictions of the selfishness axiom. Once students have seen the data generated by ultimatum game research, the debriefing questions should move them from a discussion of their own experiences in the simulation to the possible explanations of people's behavior, and then to the implications of the research data for economic theory, and finally, to our overriding question of whether capitalism is good for the poor. Points to emphasize include, first, the research clearly shows that individual differences aren't explanatory of the experimental results. We can't point to any individual characteristic and say, for example, richer people make less generous splits than poorer people, or older people make more generous splits than younger people. And point 2, which is most important for our purposes, emphasize that the researchers found that group characteristics do help to explain the observed behavior in the ultimatum game. When these experiments were conducted with people in many different cultures, the researchers found 2 factors that reliably predicted when splits were more likely to be relatively equal: 10 10s, 11 9s, 12 8s. The first factor was that the people in the society engaged in cooperative economic activities on a routine basis. For example, in a Pacific Island whaling culture, people worked together to get their food. The second factor was that more equal splits were found in economies based on markets. The greater the market integration, the higher the incidence of relatively equal splits. Finally, it's important to consciously connect the activity to our main topic, capitalism and poverty. Okay, now, why does this go into a unit on capitalism and poverty? Because one of the things that the critics of capitalism say is that if you introduce capitalist ways to indigenous peoples, to poor peoples, what you're going to do is to corrupt them morally. Well, it's kind of hard when you then throw this into the mix and say, well, wait a minute. People who live in market capitalist type societies actually are more fair in their splits than people who don't. So how do you explain that? All right? So there's no answer to that. I mean, I'm not trying to suggest that we know exactly where all this is leading. I'm just saying that it at least raises the question to us that not only may capitalism and capitalist institutions be good for the poor economically, but we can't 100% sure say that they're not good for them morally. And it appears, in fact, that ethical behavior goes along with working in markets because you know that your reputation is important. You know, if you're a seller who cheats people, how long are you going to stay in business? Okay? All right. Our experience in field tests and teacher seminars is that response to the ultimatum game activity is enthusiastic. Students are interested, and their discussions tend to be energetic and wide-ranging. A brief follow-up assignment works well to help them focus their thoughts and helps you as the teacher to assess their learning.